Hi, everybody. I'm just going to get my Instagram started, and then we will begin this Crushing Doubt Q&A, which we do every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern and 2 p.m. Pacific. Here we go on Instagram. All right, we are ready to roll. This is Crushing Doubts Q&A, as I said, every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Today is a little bit of a special version because we're going to need to go fast today. Unfortunately, I only have a half an hour today, but I wanted to make sure to stay consistent about this as much as possible. I always do. And so I'm here, but what I would encourage you is get your question in early because I'm likely to run out of being able to answer, run out of time being able to answer questions in the long run. So let's briefly touch base about why I do this. This, of course, is a Q&A for mind-body symptoms, which is any symptoms that doctors can't figure out what's going on. When you cannot figure out what's happening, it is usually happening for what's called mind-body reasons. Some people call it neuroplastic symptoms. It can be called many different things, but the reality of it is that what happens in our brain can become very real in our body, head to toe. Any symptom that the body can have, the mind can use it, and that often happens. And it happens for three main reasons, which we're going to talk about today: feelings, thinking, and your relationship with yourself. So I divide my answers in talking about these ideas. Very briefly, the emotions column. I call these columns because I used to divide a sheet of paper up into columns when I would organize this for people. And the emotions column is about those feelings, and it describes the onsets and upticks in symptoms. So the symptoms are going to tell us where we're going to be working in my system. The doubt column is about thinking. Those seemingly chronic symptoms that won't budge, that relates to doubt, thinking that stays in the same place, erroneous thinking that stays in the same place. And if we challenge those thoughts and come to new understandings, then those symptoms shift. And lastly, the power column is about symptom plateaus. They are at a fairly low level, but they won't budge because the symptoms are trying to communicate something. And it's about your relationship with yourself. So when I answer these questions, it's going to be in relation to these three columns. And that is going to give us information. And this is one thing that I love about mind-body work, if it's done the right way, is that the symptoms become information. Usually when people come to see me, the symptoms don't start off as information. They start off as torture. And they are, and in a variety of forms. Head to toe, you can have all kinds of different varieties of this experience, and it can lead to feeling crushed, which is why crushing doubt has a double meaning. It can feel crushing, but our job is to turn it into something where we are actually crushing the doubt, getting certain about what needs to be done to get better. I do this, of course, because I had 8 years of chronic everyday back pain, but I've had other mind-body symptoms as well. I had a foot issue for a long time, much less length than the back, but I got rid of that as well. Then I had a shoulder issue for about 6 months at one point, always getting better, and I knew what to do about it. And that's the key. And I am here to provide answers because, as I found, it was very hard to be certain about my ability to get better without understanding what was wrong in the first place, what needed to happen. All of those questions keep you thinking in the same, usually fear-based way, sometimes confusion. And it makes it so that if you can't change what's going on up here, you're not going to be able to change what's going on in the body. But if you can, then you can. Now, we'll be getting into some questions shortly, as soon as they start rolling in. When they do, as I said, this might be a faster paced Q&A than usual because I want to make sure to get in all the answers to the questions. And I need to stop promptly at the half-hour mark. So one thing that I will say is that as we talk about this, I'm just trying to get you all the answers that I can in a comprehensive way. So every time there's a question that's asked or you're having an interaction, don't just think of it as when you're interacting with me. Think of it as, how does this relate to me? How can I relate this to my symptoms? I'm going to get started with a question in a second. I am also going to say there's two main resources that I want to point you towards if you need more help. And sometimes it's hard to do it alone. Sometimes it's hard to only rely on this Q&A when there's limited time to get questions answered. So two main ways that you can get a lot of help from me at a very cost-effective rate. One is my book. It is available on Amazon. It's called Crushing Doubt, just like my podcast and my brand. And it is the most comprehensive resource possible. It describes anything and everything that I could possibly think of, and I've got a pretty good imagination. And it captures everything you need to know about why you can be certain your symptoms are mind body, why this is much more rampant than people realize, how we see that in society. Then it introduces my system and what I call action steps, which are new ways of thinking that can open doors to recovery. All right. So check that out on Amazon. By the way, if you have read the book and you got a lot out of it, I cannot stress enough how important it is that we get reviews onto Amazon. It makes a big difference, guys. When you go to Amazon and you look at, well, which mind body book should I read? When the reviews are not, when there's not a lot of them, then often people will just think, well, maybe that one's not so good. It's not a good way to pick out a book. It's similar to judging a book by its cover. But the reality is we need more reviews up there. And so if you got anything out of that book and you felt it's positive and you can leave a positive review, please, please, please do. Thank you so much. The other resource I want to talk about is my groups. They're very similar to this Q&A, but it's a Zoom call directly with me, and we can get a lot further in one sitting about any question or any experience you're having, because there's back and forth. You might say something and I'll say, wait, hold on. Why'd you say that? What were you thinking here? And I give you a much more pinpointed answer. I certainly do my best here, and I want to get you guys as good answers as I can. But those are two resources to check out. As I mentioned, the book is on Amazon. The sign up for my groups, these are just $100 a month for 3 days a week. These are 2-hour meetings. Sometimes they run even longer. You're talking over 24 hours a month of time with me, sometimes listening directly with you, and sometimes other conversations, all designed to get you answers. I'm just going to put that in the chat on YouTube. And if anybody needs it on Instagram, let me know. I'll see if I can put it there as well, though I don't know how to do it on the interface here. I'll see what I can do. All right, we're going to get into some questions. Mira is here. Mira says, hi, Dan. I've been knocked out of power. Symptoms I haven't had in years have been gradually coming back, and now they are constant. What do you recommend I do when symptoms are high? Okay. So as always, what I'm going to say is just my first recommendation, but the way that I work is really these are conversations. So my first answer is just the first or the next step in the conversation. If you have questions from there, why did you say that? What do you mean by that? How do I do that? Then we keep going until we get you answers. So I'm going to start off with my next answer, Mira, and we'll see where that goes. The very first thing that I would do when symptoms start to go high is to remind myself of the doubt column work and calm myself down and say, wait a minute, this does not have to be the same as when the symptoms were high before. Just because symptoms are high doesn't mean I'm going to be stuck with them. What it means is doubt has gone high, usually in the form of fear. So let me talk about what doubt is. Doubt comes in 4 different forms: fear, confusion, lack of certainty, and unanswered questions. And if you think about those 4 forms of doubt, fear is by far the worst. You can barely even think straight, and you don't think you're going to be okay. Confusion, as bad as that is, much better than fear. Now you're not so afraid, you just feel totally lost. Feeling totally lost, not fun, but much better than fear. Our job in the doubt column is to move it towards uncertainty or lack of certainty and unanswered questions. That is what I call the positive side of doubt. Fear and confusion are the negative side of doubt. They pull you backwards. They do not help you. And Mira, what I'm hearing here is that you're in one of those. You're in fear or confusion. And I don't mean that critically. It actually can be helpful to you to note, well, if that's the case, that's why it's getting worse right now. But note that phrase, right now. I want you first to work in the doubt column to remind yourself this is temporary. It does not have to stay this high. This is happening for a reason, and I can get better. So I also have an overarching rule of thumb that I say to people all the time. You make sense and your symptoms make sense. You've got to say that to yourself because your symptoms being high right now, it makes sense. And by the way, it doesn't make sense because something bad is happening. That's not what I mean. I mean, it makes sense in that there's something to figure out. And once you figure it out, those symptoms will come down. So first step is bring down the doubt as much as you can, or at least be working towards it. Because if you can bring down fear and confusion enough, then you can work more positively on the rest of things. The next step in the column system, because the flow is bring down doubt, learn about emotions, flow into power. The next step is learn about emotions. So I would look at what's happening for you and ask myself, what led to this onset or uptick? If you can locate that, that's actually going to bring down doubt a lot because it'll make sense. It also could bring down the symptom entirely. That's what the emotions column is for, is to control acute onsets and upticks in symptoms. So look and see if you can do that. Now, I hear you. You started this with, I've been knocked out of power. So there's going to be power column work, but I want to encourage you, Mira. We're going to get to the power column work, but the first thing to do is bring down the doubt. The next thing to do is to look at the emotions and use those as clues. Whatever the symptoms are telling you, the timing of them, they mean something. And we can get information from that. And from that information, that's what's going to tell us about power. So it may be counterintuitive because this is a power column issue that may have led to doubt going back up. But the reality is we've got to build it from the foundation. Bring down the doubt, learn about the emotions, flow into power. Now, I will give one other alternative if that doesn't feel like it will work for you, which is you could just go straight into the power column and say, wait a minute, why did I get knocked out of power? What happened? In a way, you could make the symptoms irrelevant to that moment if you'd like, and just explore what's happening in power. What made me feel bad? And what can I do about it? If you use one of those two methods or both, you're going to get better fast. Either way, if you're having any trouble, people who are group members for me, who are part of my membership group, not only can they come to the group meetings, but there is a community site and you can put questions there. Mira, I think you do have one in there. I will be answering that and we're going to master this. But first thing first is to calm yourself down as much as you can, even if that's to say, you know what, Dan will know what to do. That's something that I'm very fond of telling people. You do not have to know what to do necessarily. That is my job. And why do I do it that way? Because when I was getting better, I so badly wished there was somebody who did get it and could tell me what was going on. I can. Okay, Mira, we'll start with that. Shelby says, got to figure out how to change what's going on up there. Yes. If we change what's going on up here, it can change what happens in the body. Just pulled your book back out today. Anyone that hasn't purchased it should. Thank you for that, Shelby. So you're right. The project we have front and center for you is to help you not only get your mind under control, but first help you believe that you can get your mind under control. And this can be very hard for people who have experienced a lot of trauma because they haven't had a lot of experience with their minds being under control. But we can get it there. We'll work at it, okay? Jamie, thanks for saying hi. Patty, thank you for saying hi. Rita, thank you for saying hi. Really good to see everybody here. Okay. Healing with Haley has a question coming in on Instagram. Definitely seen some major mind-body stuff happening to me. Sciatica symptoms on right leg. Then woke up with tingly left foot and tingly hand. Totally TMS. So TMS is tension myositis syndrome. That is what Dr. Sarno called mind-body symptoms. You can call them mind-body symptoms, neuroplastic. There's all kinds of names for them. It doesn't matter. I do love the term TMS because I love Dr. Sarno. His books saved my life. But what Healing with Haley is highlighting here is so important for each of you. If you're looking at the symptoms, you're going to find, if you look closely enough, most mind-body symptoms are not really as consistent as they seem to be. I hear a lot of people say, it's always here. And then I say, okay, I hear you that it's always there, but is it always the same? And they'll be like, actually, no. It can sometimes feel worse in this area, or sometimes feel worse in this area, or sometimes it migrates over to here. Those symptoms move around in a way that like a broken bone doesn't. And that's what Healing with Haley is signaling to us here. She had sciatica in the right leg and then woke up with a tingly left foot and a tingly hand. Now, where would that come from? Now, very talented doubters could say, maybe I have some kind of medical condition, but that's extremely unlikely that you've got a medical condition that's behaving in such crazy ways out of nowhere. Especially for most of you, if you think about it, you probably are mind-body sufferers a long way back. I know I am. I've had mind-body symptoms throughout my life. So the chance that it's anything else is basically preposterous. Thank you for sharing that, Haley, and let me know if you have any questions further from that. Okay, Beatrice. Good to see you here. Beatrice says, "Hi all, wondering how to work, learn to," and then it got cut off. Let's see. Let's go here. Hi all, since all my symptoms began, my body has dramatically changed in appearance and strength, which adds to anxiety around body image. How to learn to accept those changes and move forward. Okay, as always, this is my first answer, but this is just a conversation for us to continue having. I do not want you to accept those changes because those changes are temporary. What happens in a lot of these situations is we freak out and we think we're changed. Now we're worse. I was 28 years old when I developed that back pain, and I felt like I was in my 90s. And I had no way of knowing that I could get back to what I am doing now, which is playing full court basketball twice a week. I have no restrictions. I probably feel I'm in better shape than I was maybe even at 28, and I'm 50 years old. So don't accept these changes. Here's what I want you to do instead in terms of moving forward. And we talked about it earlier today, Beatrice. What I want you to do is work on two primary things: the mindset and how you're moving. And not only that, what your mindset is when you're moving. Because we've got to get the mental and the physical under control. These are mind body symptoms. We need both under control. So let's get your mind working in the right way, thinking about the fact that this is just for now. This is expressing emotional distress. This is expressing low power. This is expressing the fact that you have a lot of doubt about whether you can move and really whether you can get back. When you, and guys, this is for Beatrice, but it's for everybody. Watch the language you use. The language that you use is telling us something about what's going on inside. When you say my body has dramatically changed, that sounds scary. That sounds like, oh my God, this has gone way awry. Now, I'm not saying it's not true, Beatrice. I understand that it is actually true, that there's been a lot of change, but it's temporary. I've said this to you many times, and I'm going to say it as many times as you need to. You can get the body pretty much back to full shape from completely out of shape in about a month. I mean, when I had the back pain, I wasn't doing much physically at all. And I started to try to do push-ups and my arms were shaking. I couldn't even do a single push-up. And I used to do 500 push-ups a day. Like that, but that was a rare time in my life when that was happening. But it still shows you for somebody like that to get to a place where they could do no push-ups at all. And then 1 month later, I could do like 20 push-ups at a time. You can get your whole body back very, very quickly. So don't accept this. Instead, work on the mindset and start moving. If you can move with a decent enough mindset, it's going to start turning around what goes on in your body. And that body image, by the way, that's being driven in part by all of the bad feelings that you're having about yourself, which are starting to emerge as we study what these symptoms are and what they're saying. Okay. Beatrice, let me know if that helped you and if you need to know more. Okay. Jamie, good to see you. When you are in trauma activation because of processing things, should I still do work in the columns for relief of symptoms, or should I try to rest and relax? Okay. So let's first define what trauma activation is. Most people have an experience of trauma in the past. A trauma activation is when something in the present feels like it mirrors something from the past or brings up an idea from the past, and we go into this like kind of altered state. We can't think as straight. I call that trauma activation. It's fear goes up, thinking becomes much harder. We tend to have more symptom activation during such a time. There's a lot of self-attack. Our power goes down. The doubt goes up. Trauma activation is not fun. And so, Jamie, when you're asking this, the interesting thing is there isn't a hard and fast rule to your question. What I would do is apply your question each time and say, this time, do I think that working in the columns is going to make me feel safer? Or do I think I need to not pile extra work onto my plate? So it all depends on what is going to bring down your doubt. The front line of everything is doubt work here. So which is going to bring down the doubt more? Doing the work on the columns or saying, I can't even bother with the work because the work won't be good? And it could go either way, Jamie. There are going to be times where you'll have a trauma activation, but you'll say, okay, wait, hold on. A trauma activation is what Dan calls mega doubt, like a really big doubt. And I don't need to listen to it. Instead, I can go looking for the emotional theme that caused this, or I can go looking for the power column experience that led to this. Sometimes it's going to be like that. Other times, you're going to find you start doing that columns work and it's just making the trauma activation go up and the symptoms are getting worse and you're freaking out. In that case, rest and relax is certainly a way to go, but mostly you want to relax that mind. And so sometimes that can involve what I call bottom up work, where you're working with the body. Maybe it's you working on your breathing or you're meditating and just relax. Another time, sometimes it could be cognitive, where you say to yourself, you know what? I don't need to do so much work. This will work its way out. A trauma activation will just calm down. So, Jamie, I don't have a specific rule for you on that, but you can always ask the question, what's right for me in this moment? What's going to make the doubt go down in this moment? What's going to make me feel taken care of in that columns structure? All right. Always do the thing that feels like it will take the most care of you. All right. Kasim, good to see you here. Hi, Dan. I notice I'm triggered or reminded by my various initial injuries by being in certain locations almost obsessively. Is this attentional TMS? Okay. So I call attentional TMS or attentional mind-body symptoms that are largely there because you can't stop paying attention to them, which can often happen with symptoms. But that usually happens, attentional mind-body issues, when fear is really high. So the way I think about it is this: attentional mind-body symptoms are, you're having the symptom and you can't stop thinking about the symptom. What you're describing, Kasim, I think is different. What you're describing, I would call a doubt trigger. Now, we've talked about doubt triggers before, but this is a particular form of doubt trigger. A doubt trigger could be, this motion made me think I could injure myself that way. But doubt triggers can also be like, that's the time of day when my symptoms tend to go up. Or, oh, I remember this place and it's gotten my mind on this. Now, the interesting thing is, I would argue in this case, not only is it a doubt trigger, but there's a little bit of attentional mind body happening also, because your mind has been switched on to it. And my rule of thumb with attentional mind body issues is get a better obsession, which means find your power, find what makes you passionate about life and focus on that. So address the attentional side with finding a better obsession, and deal with the doubt trigger by remembering that whatever happened at those times, you're not that person anymore. You really aren't. You've learned so much. Every time you run into a doubt trigger, which again is just an environmental experience that could raise your doubt, remind yourself, if I conquer this doubt trigger, I'm winning ground against doubt. It's always an opportunity. All right. So you're saying, is it attentional mind body? There is an attentional aspect, but that's secondary. I think the primary thing is a doubt trigger. Don't worry too much about the attentional side, because it's really just happening because there's a trigger. Now, if we find that you get all your triggers down and your doubt's nice and low, but you just can't stop thinking about the symptom, then we'll go into power work, because that's where we get a better obsession. I will say this, with my back, with my foot, with my shoulder, any injury, it wasn't even an injury, any mind-body symptom that lasted for longer than a couple days, really, or certainly a couple weeks, started to become attentional. I'd wake up and be like, how is it? I'd go to sleep and think, how is it? And it is a great relief. And this is going to happen for you, Kasim, and it's going to happen for each and every one of you if you do the work. It's going to come a time where you'll wake up in the morning and you'll forget to even think about it. And you're going to love that. But that happens when doubt is down lower. All right. There's a lot of information in what I just said, Kasim, but we'll revisit as needed. Okay. Trishley14, good to see you here. Okay. Trish says, hey, Dan, how to convey safety to the brain when we go back to a place where we had panic type symptoms. Wow. It's just like what Kasim said. The mind was fine at the time, to not fear going back to the same place. Okay. So it's a similar answer to what I said to Kasim, but I'm going to tailor it a bit to what you're asking about. So first of all, let me say this. A lot of times in the mind-body world, people will say, tell yourself you're safe. And I often say, if you tell yourself you're safe, but you don't believe it, it doesn't do anything. So we need to know why you're safe. And Trish, I don't know how much experience you have with my column system, but one of the advantages of the system is it can explain what's happening. Why is it happening? Why can it get better? How can it get better? All of those things give you a sense of safety. And if we apply it to your specific question, now hopefully this will make some sense to you if you don't know the system. If you know the system, this will make even more sense. But when you get to a place where you had those panic type symptoms and it's starting to come back to you, you can actually say to yourself, well, wait, hold on. I can do columns work here. I'm not the same person I was, just like I said to Kasima. I have new information. When you have new information, your brain is not the same as it was, and you can start doing different work. So I would say to myself, I'm in this situation. This is a doubt trigger. I have a chance to conquer this. And what I need to do is simply be aware. I'll just start you off with this one suggestion. Simply being aware that fear is driving the symptoms. That changes the picture. Because usually what happens is we have fear of the fear and fear of the symptoms. And then we're just off to the races. We're in a cycle with ourselves. But if you recognize what FDR said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Recognize fear is the only thing that can cause this to go way, way up, and it's not going to harm you. So you could maybe let in the fear and say, can't harm me anyway. Or you could combat it and say, I don't have to be that afraid. In fact, all I have to do is be aware that I'm afraid. You don't even have to master the fear. And that can help you. Lots of things to say about that, Trish, but that's a starting point. Let's continue this. We have only a couple minutes left today, and I'm sorry it's so rushed, but I will be back here for a more full session, probably 45 minutes, maybe even an hour next week. Okay, Rude Master says, hey, Dan, a.k.a. Pain Detective. That's his nickname for me. Good to see you, Rudy. Okay, Russell Crane's Music. Good to see you, Russell. Hi, Dan. Following up on our email, dealing with the symptom of frequent urination. I know that it's an emotions column symptom, and I know the emotional themes. What should I do next to reduce the symptom? Well, first of all, I need to make sure that you see the doubt that's in here. Because if you have doubt in here, you could know it's emotional, but at some level be like, but am I going to be able to control this? Is it a purely mind body? So we have to assess that a little bit, Russell. Now, you said but let's assume that you're good with that. And you have low doubt a lot of the time after we've worked together for some time. So let's assume you do know, and you know the emotions column symptom, and you know the emotional themes. If the symptom then doesn't reduce, one of two things is happening. Well, one of three things. One, there could be doubt there. But assuming not, then it's one of two things. Either you have the emotional theme in the right ballpark, but it's not specific enough. That often happens, and that can be why it doesn't come down. Or alternatively, it could be a power issue where you've got the right emotion, but now you need to know what to do about it. Okay, let's talk more about it. I'm going to rush through these questions, see if I can get them answered in the next couple minutes. Laura says, I feel like my heart is beating extra hard, fluttering, making it feel like I'm vibrating, but it's a vibration with my heartbeat. Started a business online, trying to be independent financially, so to leave a narcissistic husband, but lots of doubt and stress doing it. That's when my new symptoms started. So Laura, that makes perfect sense that there'd be a lot of symptoms going on at the time, but I want to encourage you. There's lots we can do about it. I would love it if you come to see me in group because I can really work with you on this. But however you do it, reading my book, the group, doing it on your own, coming to these Q&As, watching my podcast, whatever you want to do, I just want to encourage you, let's start organizing the information about why these things are happening. And as we do that, we're going to gain more control over it. The doubt column helps us get control over seemingly chronic symptoms. The emotions column helps us get control of acute symptoms. And the power column helps us align with ourselves so the columns don't have to communicate so much with us. Okay. Trish Lee says, wow, that makes so much sense. Excellent. I am not the person I was, being able to conquer it. I am not that person. Thank you. Yes. Trish Lee says, Laura, those were my symptoms too. Very scary. They certainly can be, but all symptoms are resolvable. Okay. Shelby says, group is amazing. Thank you, Shelby. LOL, very talented doubter here. Yes, you absolutely are. Rick Garrett, thank you for the tip. It's very, very helpful, guys. I'm often running at a deficit. I try to do this work at a lower fee for people because there's so many people who can't even work in these situations. So anything helps. Rick, I really appreciate that. Mira says, thanks so much, Dan. My pleasure, Mira. Beatrice says, thanks, Dan. I will try. I think that I was so focused on appearance before that now when I see swelling and things don't fit, it becomes a separate source of pressure after these past 2 years. Beatrice, we're in the process of really reworking a lot of what's going on for you. We'll get there. Jamie says, thank you, Dan. What you said helped. It always does. Excellent, Jamie. All right. Shelby says, oh my God, can't wait to wake up like that. Yep, you will. You're going to forget that you're hurting. Big Man Mike says, thanks, Dan. Love what you said about finding a new obsession. Happy that helped. And Rudy says, sorry, caught you too late. I guess you're about to end. Hopefully I'll catch you next time. Yes, this is a shorter one than usual, but in the future, don't worry about it, Rudy. And listen, you can go back and watch the video, and I'll be here next week. The weeks are flying by. I'll be here every week. Meanwhile, you can always come see me in group. That's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I have group times, and I can see you. And it's for cheap, $100 a month. So come see me. I would love to work with you. Thank you, guys. I'm sorry it was so fast. Again, Rick, thanks for the tip. Really appreciate it. And keep the questions coming. I'll be here same time next week. It's 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, and it'll be a lot less rush next time. Thanks, guys.